All right. Well done. And thanks for those donations. With no further time spent, we will move forward to our Rotary friend, our friend from Montana, Bob Quinn. Dr. Bob Quinn is a farmer and a rancher. He lives in Big Sandy, Montana. He was raised on a farm that was started about 100 years ago, if I understand. He received a botany degree, BS, from the University of Montana. Then he went on to the University of California, where he received his PhD in plant biochemistry. He knows a lot about plants and how they grow and how to make them work. He's won a number of national awards, especially in the area of organic farming. He's recognized, as I said earlier, as a leader and a pioneer. Last year, he published a book, Grain by Grain. Since then, I've had a chance to talk to him a few times and gotten to know him just a little bit through email. I would call Bob a forward-thinking humanitarian farmer. He lives his life by the four-way test. I read a reference to Bob from a friend of his, a fellow instructor at the University of Montana. They referred to him as the most incredible idea generator that they've ever met. So it appears that Bob is always on the cutting edge when it involves botany or farming. Here's our friend, fellow Rotarian, Bob Quinn. Bob?
Unmuted. Am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. And it's great to be here. And my big Montana hello. And from the Big Sandy Rotary Club, if I was there in person, I would be giving you a banner from our Rotary Club. So this is the closest I'm going to get. So you can take a picture, Ben, and then you can have it. How's that?
All right, we'll do that.
All right, that'll be great. Well, to give you a little update, I'd love to hear your report because we just finished our dictionary dispersal here too. We pass out to about 5 different schools in our county. 2 of them's on the Indian reservation that borders us, and that's a lot of fun that we do every year. And then we also put up Christmas lights on Main Street. Main Street in Big Sandy is about 2.5 blocks long, and so they're up, I want you to know, and in good order. So our Rotary Club isn't meeting every week. We're meeting about every other week, and we have a hard time finding a place to meet, and our normal meeting places are shut down. And so we haven't got into the Zoom mode yet, but we still gather about a dozen or so of us out of the 20 plus members that we have about every other week. So that's where we are. And our club started in 1950, so we have a ways to go to catch up to your 100th anniversary. So congratulations. My dad was a founding member, and I've really enjoyed my membership in it for, oh gosh, since I moved back to the farm in about 79, I guess I joined Rotary, so in Big Sandy. Anyway, Ben asked me to tell you a little bit about what we do here, and a little bit about our farming and my philosophy of tying food and health together. And and I'm going to take a few minutes to do that, and then try to leave 10 or 15 minutes for questions and any comments or anything people would like to focus on more, or if I said something too radical, you can question me on it. That's just fine. I really enjoy your part of the world. My parents used to come to Sun City West. They had a house there for many years, and my sister. So I get down once in a while, but it's been a while since we've been to visit, and I really enjoy your part of the country. But our part of the country is wide open, and we, you know, Montana is as big as Germany, and with only 1 million people. So we are really spread out, and our nearest neighbor is 2 or 3 miles away, and I like it that way. It gives us a lot of elbow room, a lot of blue sky, and stars at night. I really enjoy that. I was raised here on our wheat and cattle ranch, about 2,400 acres while I was growing up. Now it's around about 3,600. And we raised, all the time I was growing up, pretty much just small grains like wheat and barley. I went away to study my favorite subject, science and plants. And in 1978, I returned to the farm, and since then, when I first returned, the farm was 2,400 acres still, and a little bit small for two families. My folks are still there. So I tried to figure out a way that we could bring more income into the farm to support two families. I didn't want to buy out the neighbors because I like my neighbors, so I didn't want to eliminate them. And I didn't want to go to town and get another job. I came home to the farm. I didn't come home to work in town. And my wife had more to do than she could do, and helping me and helping with the farm. So I didn't want to send her to town and get a job. So after a few false starts, I found a fourth cousin of mine in Southern California who didn't have anything to do. And I said, his name was Steve Lancaster. And I said, well, Steve, why don't you see if you can sell some of my wheat down there to whole grain bakers in Southern California. And then a week later, he called that back and he said, well, I got a customer for us. And this guy owned a whole grain bakery and was looking for high quality, high protein wheat. That's what we had. And he started buying a truckload a week and paid us $1 a bushel over the market price, which is around $3. So we had an increase of almost a third right off the bat. That really helped us and opened up a whole new world for me of marketing, direct marketing. And when we didn't have quite enough or as good a quality as our customer wanted, I went looking for other farmers that had same quality of wheat, and that's how we kept our business going. And our customer in California loved it, and he called up after we'd been in business about a year. He called me up, and now this is about 1984 now, and he said, "Hey Bob," he says, "you think you can find some of the wheat, same kind of quality you've been sending us, that's organic?" And I said, you know, what do you do when a customer asks you for something? I said, well, sure, Jim, don't worry about a thing. You'll have it in 10 days or so. I hung up the phone and I thought, ooh, I don't even know anybody that's organic. And I said, I don't even believe in this organic stuff, because I had been taught all my days in school, in high school, and in college that a plant can't tell the difference between a molecule of nitrogen coming out of a manure pile and one out of a bag of ammonium sulfate or some other chemical fertilizer. And that's what I believed, and that's what I was taught. But I didn't want to let my prejudice stand in the way of making my customers happy. So I went looking, and I finally found an old farmer up in Northeast Montana. I went up and got a load of his grain, and we cleaned it and sent it to California. And Jim's called me back and said, "This is fantastic stuff." He says, "Can you find me another load?" And then another and another. And pretty soon I was scouring around for all the organic farmers I could find, which weren't very many in 1984 in Montana. And there were just a handful. And they invited me to one of their meetings. And so I went, and I was really amazed at what I heard and what I saw. I've been used to going to Montana Grain Growers. I was a member of that. Montana Farm Bureau, I was a member of that. And a lot of the meeting time was spent on, trying to figure out how we're going to get more money out of the farm program, and woe is me on, the weather and prices and on and on and on. And I went to this organic meeting, and there was none of that kind of talk. They were talking about their farm and how they could walk over their fields, and the tilth was improving. They could feel it under their feet, but the ground was softer. They talked about growing their own fertilizers by planting legumes and like clovers and alfalfas and working them down to the soil to feed the soil. They talked about eliminating chemicals like herbicides and pesticides using rotations to break up cycles of weeds and diseases and insects, and therefore they didn't need them. They were really trying to mimic nature. I was astounded by this. And I came home being kind of a plant scientist myself, and I told my dad, I said, "Dad, this sounds so interesting. We've got to try this." And he said, "Well, we don't know what we're doing." He said, "This is really risky." And I said, "Well, that's all right. Let's just try for 20 acres. And I never let anybody tell me that, I never let not knowing what I was doing ever slow me down anyway. I always was trying new things, but I tried them in a small portion. I never wanted to put the farm at risk, so I'd always try just small experiments. And that's what we did in this case. It was 20 acres out of, it was 1% of our farm, less than that. And we had that in alfalfa. I worked that down, and that was my organic trial. And next to it was my chemical standard practice. And we planted winter wheat, and the next year at harvest time, the yield was almost the same. With the organic was about 35 and bushels an acre, and the and the non-organic was around 37. The protein was about 15.6% for the organic and 15.4 for the chemical field, which was not statistically different. They were just almost the same. My dad was amazed. He was astounded. Here he had been spending tens of thousands of dollars every year for chemicals to produce these nice crops. And this young whippersnapper of a son just got back from California and matched what he had been doing with none of that cost and none of those inputs. And I said, wow. I said, this is fantastic, Dad. I said, let's convert the whole farm. And he said, oh, no, we can't do that. He says, what will we do with it? We don't know anything about marketing. We don't know nothing. And of course, he was right. And I said, well, how about 50%? He said, how about 10? I said, how about 15? He said, okay. So we converted 15% of the farm the next year. This is 1988 now. And in 1988, we had a drought. And in Montana, when droughts come, we normally have grasshoppers. And we had them again this year after a 32-year break, but they were bad. And they eat everything. And with my chemical fields, well, I knew what to do with that. I just called up my pilot friend and I said, hey, Bill, I got it, grasshoppers. And he said, don't worry about a thing, Bob. I'll be there tomorrow. And then he comes with his spray plane, spraying malathion all over everything. Grasshoppers are all dead, and just like that, in a matter of minutes, of course, everything else is dead too. And he said, he'd always say, now, Bob, he said, now remember that's poison. You better don't go in that field for at least 24 hours. I said, I know, it's poison. So anyway, then I would call up my organic friends and I said, what do we do for grasshoppers? I was really almost panicking. And they said, oh, just calm down. He said, here, try this Nosema locusta. It's a protozoa. It's a little bit smaller than a bacterium. And you put it on wheat bran, you spread it around your edges of your field before the grasshoppers, show up and destroy everything. But as they're coming in from the pasture, that's what I did. And he said, they eat it and they get sick. And then all their friends come and they die. And then all their friends come and eat them. I think it's kind of like American politics, you see. And that's what I did. And that's what happened. And at harvest time, even though they had eaten in about 20 feet around the edge of that field, there was almost nothing there. At harvest time, when I got the combine out in the field, what was left of it, which is most of the field, of course, there were hardly any grasshoppers in the combine tank. Meanwhile, across the coulee on the other side of the ravine, in my chemical field, the malathion dissipated about 10 days, and the grasshoppers came back, and I couldn't afford to spray it again because it was very expensive. The crop was almost a loss anyway. Prices weren't that good. And so at harvest time, there were more grasshoppers than wheat in my grain tank. And that fall, when I got together with my dad, to kind of do the fall summary of everything. I said, look at this, Dad. 2 years in a row, organic has equaled, and in this case, this year, surpassed the best of what chemistry had to offer. And we did everything that we were told to do. And it was a failure. And he said, I'm done with chemicals. And I'm going to go cold turkey on the whole rest of the farm. And he said, okay. And he let me do it. And off we went. And we had a lot of learning. We made some mistakes. But after, so that's been 32 years ago, we're still learning. But it's been very successful. In 3 years, we were able to pay off our operating note. That's unheard of in Montana. People are paying more and more for inputs. The prices are low, and they can hardly pay their bills, their input bills, with what they get for their crop. And we didn't have those input bills, and so we were able to pay off those debts, and we were making a good living in just a very short time. And so that's one thing that, of course, that really encouraged my father too. He could see those numbers also. At about the same time, we started going to food shows, because besides organic grain in our Montana flour and grain business, we started getting requests for stone ground flour. And so again, I told my customers, I don't know anything about stone mills. And I said, why don't you put it in your bakery? Can't you have fresh ground flour? They said, oh no, we can't do that in California. All the air quality rules and everything, it'll never go here. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. And so I bought a stone mill from Europe, and the salesman said, all you have to do is plug it in the wall. It's kind of like one of those used cars guys, you know, that tells you how great everything is. And so when it arrived, we went to plug it in the wall, and it was wired for European circuitry, and it didn't even plug into the wall. So that was our first little hiccup. I hired an insurance friend of mine to be my miller and sent him back east to talk to some guys that ran stone mills, and we just learned it from the bottom up. And it started to work, and was a success. And we started going to food shows to advertise that we had now stone ground whole wheat flour from high protein Montana grown wheat. And my dad and mom went with me to the first food show in '86 in Anaheim, California. It was the biggest one in the country. And again, we had no idea what we're doing, but we built our own booth, and we just showed up and we told our story, and it was a lot of fun. And we, at the end of the show, my cousin and I had our pockets full of business cards for referrals. We were thrilled to death. My dad had brought with him a little jar of this ancient wheat. I had seen it when I was in high school. It was claimed to come out of King Tut's tomb. That's what the folks told us, that they were passing it out at the fair. And it was a giant wheat, about 3 times the size of regular wheat. And my dad had taken this down, and he was showing it to everybody. And one person came by and gave him his business card and said, you know what, I'm really looking for something like this. I'll take everything you can grow. And so we had about 50 pounds in the shed at that time. We planted that. And my dad was so excited. He had one business card and one referral. We had a pocket full, and he was just excited as we were. And that was 32 years ago. And after about 30 years, it went from a half acre that we planted then to 100,000 acres that we have, mostly contracted with other organic farmers in Montana, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. We sell this grain all over the world. Most of it goes to Italy. 3/4 of it goes to Italy. They make over 3,000 different products there. You can find it in your local health food stores and even in regular grocery stores now. We sell it under the brand name of kamut, and which is an ancient Egyptian word for wheat. And the biggest surprise that happened to us once we got started was a lady that a friend of ours, a nearby haver, that couldn't eat any wheat. And my dad gave her some of this kamut pasta. And I would have never done that because I knew she couldn't eat wheat. She was terribly sensitive to it. And she called up the next day and she said, what is this stuff? She said, when I eat it, it makes me feel better. And she says, you know, I have a sister that can't eat wheat, and she has a lot of other food sensitivity problems. Can I give some of that to her? And we said, sure. So we gave her a whole box full, and she sent this pasta on, and her sister reported back in a few weeks that not only could she eat it, but after she'd eaten it for a few weeks, she was less sensitive to other food problems she was having. And I thought, whoa, now this is something special. This isn't just a novelty. It's supposed to come out of all the Egyptian tombs somewhere. This is like a gift from the Lord or something. And so we really, at that point, took it much more serious. And that was the point when we decided to register a trademark, come up with an ancient Egyptian name for wheat, and sell it under that and protect it so that people couldn't claim that it was ancient wheat when it wasn't. And our trademark comes with, it's not an ownership of the grain, it's a customer guarantee. And our guarantees were it was always grown organically, it was always pure ancient wheat and had certain health values and that sort of thing. But that wasn't good enough. I really wanted to understand, if I could, why it was different. So we started doing research, and I couldn't find anybody in America that believed there was a problem with wheat at that point. And I didn't have $1 million just to go hire it all done. They said they would do it, but the researchers that I talked to said, well, he said, you know, if I did that kind of research, I'd be wasting my time and your money. So I wasn't very encouraged by that report. And I ended up in Italy, where they really were interested in this and did believe that there was a problem with wheat, because a lot of people, more and more people, were having trouble eating it, and without problems of all kinds of different problems, sensitivity problems. And so we started cooperation with a research team from the University of Bologna, which is nearly 1,000 years old, so it didn't start around yesterday, and the University of Florence, their medical research hospital there. And we soon found that this grain, compared to modern wheat, was anti-inflammatory. And wheat has never been reported as being anti-inflammatory before. And so because inflammation is tied to all chronic disease, we started then studying human chronic disease. And we did a lot of research with clinical studies using patients that had these diseases. And we published papers on heart disease, on diabetes, on irritable bowel syndrome, all kinds of diseases like this. And they were all very, very consistent. They lowered cholesterol. They, in the diabetes studies, it was very interesting to those folks. They lowered blood sugar, they lowered insulin, they lowered insulin resistance. In all cases, they increased magnesium and zinc in the blood. And so the results were very, very consistent. So that really opened a whole new door of understanding for me about the relationship between food and health and food and medicine. You know, this is not a new idea. Hippocrates taught nearly 2,300 years ago that food should be our medicine and medicine should be our food. And now I'm really understanding why he's taught that. And I think that it's not only just with wheat. I think if we studied other foods, we would see those foods that we have done extreme amount of breeding on and changed them purely for industrial or yield or cosmetic purposes. Many times nutritional factors have been left behind because we're not measuring that. So I'm really on a big drive to bring that rein industrial agriculture in and saying, you guys, the industrial agriculture in this country is responsible for 60% of chronic disease because it's related to diet. We're not getting the nutrition we need in our diet anymore. And chronic disease is killing more than anything, any other types of diseases in America, in the whole world. And this is really a key to solving the ever increasing problem of chronic disease growth, such as diabetes, even obesity. People on the Kamut diets have reduced weight. And so there's all kinds of things we're seeing. So anyway, that gives you a little bit of an overview. I know time's going pretty fast, but that gives you a little bit of a taste. And Ben already mentioned my book. Here's the ad, and then I'll shut up about that. You can find this book online or in your favorite bookstore, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you like it or you have any questions, you can always write me or call me or ask me about it. And anyone who gets to Montana is always welcome to come visit us at the farm. So thank you very much for having me, Ben. And thanks to all of you for your attention.
Quick question. Are you
Fire.
there?
Yes, I'm listening.
This is Dave.
Hi, Dave.
We have a wheat and cattle ranch in eastern Montana, Roosevelt County.
Oh, good.
And is the wheat you were talking about Hard Red Spring? And number
No.
2, is the other wheat, the non-allergic wheat, Durham?
The Kamut wheat that we sell is a Coruscant wheat. Now, Coruscant is a common name for it, and it's a very, very close relative to Durham. And so it's in the Durham family. There's 3 families of wheat, and the Durham family is different than the bread wheat family. And it's in the Durham. It's a very, very close relative to Durham. So that's what it's most like, and it grows best where Durham grows best.
Okay. Welcome to Arizona.
No, thank you.
Hey, Bob, I have a comment / question as well. This is Don Wild here. So a few years ago, Netflix came out with a documentary called What's with Wheat. Are you familiar with this?
I don't think I've seen that one.
It actually speaks to what you're talking about, where we have genetically modified the wheat to have smaller stalks, but it has created allergy issues in the population and chronic illness issues because of that. So that's very interesting you say that. And my question is there a list of stores here in Arizona that we could purchase your product from?
Well, yes, if you go on Kamut.com, you can find the different products. Most of them are made by mainline processors. And you can find those. If you take those names to your food store, you should be able to find them. I tell people if they're having trouble with wheat sensitivity, there's 4 things that you can do to probably almost eliminate your problem with wheat sensitivity and be able to eat wheat again. First of all, if you'll eat an ancient or an heirloom wheat instead of a modern one, And by ancient wheats, I'm talking about einkorn and emmer and spelt, but make sure the spelt's not crossed with modern wheat. And that's why we use a trademark to make sure that the Coruscant wheat sold as Kamut can never be crossed or mixed with modern wheat, just to make it cheaper so somebody's making more money. We're not interested in that. We're interested in making more health and making more nutrition. So if you focus on the seed and get an ancient or heirloom grain, something that existed before World War II probably was mostly okay. Secondly, if it's organically grown, then you can avoid problems with residues from herbicides like Roundup, which mimics what a lot of people experience as wheat sensitivity. It's really sensitivity against Roundup herbicide, which is really an antibiotic. It acts like an antibiotic, and so it's raising trouble with your microbiome in your gut. You know, we have more bacteria in our gut than we have human cells in our body. So if you start messing with those, something is going to go wrong, and that's what happens. The third thing is you should always eat whole grain. You know, people say, "Oh my gosh, organic will never feed the world, and you know we'll all starve and all this stuff." Well, that's a bunch of hooey. First of all, organic can feed the world, and it's the future. It's the future of food, and it's the future of agriculture. It's 6% of the total food sold in America now, and it's taken 35 years to get to that rate, level. But at the current rate, in another 35 years, it'll be 100% if it keeps going like that. So it's not so far-fetched to look at the conversion. But if you, I can tell people right now how they can increase the amount of wheat we have in America by 1/3. And that's by not throwing 1/3 away as the brand and the germ. It's thrown away and the pigs eat it. The pigs are eating better than we are. This is crazy. We should be eating whole grain. And if you eat the whole wheat, your health will improve. And the fourth thing that you can do is eat sourdough or sprouted breads or sprouted products. When you make sourdough, the fermentation process is pre-digesting that gluten and even some of the complex starches in the wheat and in the wheat flour. And in fact, a fermentation of 48 hours will destroy almost 93 or 95% of the gluten. So it really changes what the makeup of the wheat. And if you have trouble, that is one of the things that can really help break things down. The question earlier about changing the genetics of wheat by making it shorter was part of the Green Revolution. And I believe that certainly had a factor, but I think maybe a bigger felon in this story is the bread companies that wanted a big low volume, and therefore had the plant breeders breed grain that could make gluten that held more air, that had stronger and stronger gluten, that could hold more air, and therefore they could sell more air than wheat in their bread, and made the famous air bread that Americans all know and love. And it's really, the nutrition of that is not very good. Not because it's just full of air, but also how they've changed it and how they've taken out. But that's probably, in my mind, has made a lot of changes in what we actually eat, the material that we eat. Making the plants shorter, I'm not sure how much that has actually changed the nutrition. Probably some, because we're not looking at nutrition, but probably the changing of the gluten factor. And it's not a matter of how much gluten, it's a quality question of what that gluten is like. That probably has given more people trouble with digestion than anything else. So afraid that was a very long answer to a short question.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Bob, I'll give you a simpler question. Where are you in Montana? And if I come to visit, do you have any trout water?
Well, trout water. We're about 3 miles from the Missouri, so we can go fishing. But unfortunately, we are in north central Montana, so we're between Havre and Great Falls, it's bigger towns. We're about 60 miles south of the Alberta-Saskatchewan border. So we're 60 miles south of the Canadian border. And by the time the Missouri River gets to our place, it's too warm for trout. I'm sorry to tell you. So, but here is the silver lining. I have a nephew that lives in Missoula that is surrounded by blue ribbon trout streams, and he is a lover of trout fishing, and he can satisfy that need if you come. So don't despair.
Been to Missoula, been to Bozeman.
Yep. And then north to Big Sandy. We're about 300 miles north of Bozeman. Bozeman is just north of Yellowstone, and we're almost straight north of there, 300 miles on the near the Canadian border.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Everybody's talking about how this program has been and how your talk has been.
I was muted and I'm unmuted now. I just asked Bob if you could elaborate on a day in the life of Bob Quinn on your farm. What do you do now?
Well, I've reached the age now that I think it's time to turn things over to the next generation. So I've been selling my business interests to my employees so they can continue on. And I've rented out my farm to two of my employees that were working for me one for 2 years and one for 6 years. And they're continuing on and doing organic. And so now I am working with mostly with research. I try to grow all my own food. About 85% of what I eat every day is grown on my farm. And I'm experimenting with a lot of dry land vegetables. We don't have irrigation here. We only have 12 inches of rain a year, but we're a long way from the river, and our groundwater is full of sodium and salts, and it's not fit for irrigation. But I'm finding that there's a lot of vegetables we can grow without irrigation. So I've been spending about 15 years now studying potatoes, and I started with potatoes and onions and squash, and now I've expanded that into watermelons and tomatoes and all kinds of vegetables. Not everything will grow, but some do. And I was in Israel a few years ago, and a friend of mine said, well, we have a watermelon that grows in the desert. And I said, oh, I have a desert? And so he gave me some seeds, and I grew them, and by golly, they're just fantastic. And so I was amazed that a watermelon, which is full of water, can actually grow dry land without irrigation for us. And if the summers are long enough, sometimes we get cut short with the snow in September, but if they're long enough and hot enough, they're just fantastic. The other project I'm working on is a subterranean greenhouse. So as I told you, my folks had a home there in Sun City West. Well, we're not going to be doing that. And so I decided, since I'm not going to Arizona for the winter, I'm going to bring a little of Arizona to me. So I've dug a hole 5 feet deep. I'm going to put a greenhouse over the top of that. And on inside of that, I can plant oranges and lemons and grapefruit and all the things I love about Arizona in the winter. And that's just under construction now. So that's going to be one of my projects. And then I'm working on a project to convert or to donate 600 acres of my farm to create an organic research center for the Upper Great Plains. And so we're looking for, it's going to be a nonprofit. So if any of you have any friends that are looking for any kind of a tax equalization program that would any have interest in some of the things we're doing, give me a call. I'd love to talk. We hope to eventually have it self-sufficient with our Kamut project, but right now we don't have enough money to get it started. But that's one thing that I'm working on, because nothing like that exists in the Northern Great Plains. And one of the biggest problems farmers have in converting to organic is knowing where to start. And we have very few extension agents that are trained in organic, and they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to have problems they can't solve. And so we want to have a place where people can see research right up front solving those problems and also demonstrating how to do stuff. So that's, I work a little bit of those projects in the summer every day. So I'm loving it. That's what I do. And in the winter, I'm doing this kind of thing. I'm doing a lot of Zoom conferences for college classes now. I really love to speak to the students and plan for the next season. So that's how I spend my winters. Oh, I still like to ski. I like to go snow skiing, and as soon as we get a little more snow, I'll be heading to the slopes and doing a little skiing. But I'm not a hot dog on the slopes. I just have fun. And I don't go every day. I just go once in a while. So I don't really have a normal day, but that's some of the things that I would do during the course of the days.
I was listening to a report this morning where they were talking about the Department of Agriculture and probably going in next year, how they're going to be looking to subsidize more environmentally better grown food and grains and, and farming and everything. Do you see that that's something that the federal government's going to be more involved with, or is that just NPR giving news?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. You know, the federal programs now have changed. So they're no longer direct payments to farmers. Now they're subsidizing insurance programs. So already we've moved a little bit away from putting money in farmers' pockets just to pay for chemical bills. Before we were organic, we had about $25,000 to $27,000 a year in chemical bills for inputs, fertilizers and herbicides and that sort of thing. Our government checks from the government for subsidies was, guess what? Right between 25 and 27,000. So this wasn't money that was given to the farmer. This is money that that went through the farmer's checkbook on the way to the chemical companies. So it was a very clever transfer of federal money from the federal treasury to industrial ag, chemical industrial complex. And I think to have that eliminated would be a huge, huge step. And to provide what I'd like to see, if they're going to give out money, I'd like to see money go to research. You know, I told you earlier, 6% of the food in America now is organic, but only 1% of the USDA research budget is earmarked for organic. And 99% is focused on chemical agriculture. They're not even keeping up with the times. And as I mentioned earlier, and one of the reasons I'm looking at this research center is because we don't have the research that we need. But imagine 120 years ago, or whenever the cars first came out and showed that they were going to be successful, but still were primitive on the roads. Wonder if the government, instead of focusing on research to help build better cars, was spending 99% of their budget on improving the stagecoach. That's what we're doing. And the sooner that we can change that emphasis, I think the better off we're going to be, and it'll help us go in the right direction.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can we get Bob's contact information somehow, email, phone, address, kind of stuff?
We will send it out in the next 24 hours. Yes. Well,
Thank you.
absolutely. Bob, quick question about apples. Now, can you grow apples in Montana?
I have if I had time, I would have cried up on my observation tower and showed you my apple orchard. I've got a little experimental orchard. I've got 30 different varieties of apples. There are 200 different varieties listed in the country that are suitable for zone 3. That's what we are. And then as far as a weather zone, that means we can go 40 below zero in the winter. And I've tried about 50 of those 200. And we're looking for apples that are good tasting and have good survivability here on the prairie. One thing that I'm experimenting with is taking apple juice and mixing it with sour cherries. We can also grow sour cherries on bushes very, very well and very easily. We can't grow sweet cherries, but we can grow sour cherries, and they're just loaded with antioxidants and a lot of nutrition. And if we can make a breakfast drink with apples and sour cherries, it's delicious. I have it for breakfast every morning from my own orchard. And this would be the other thing I'm trying to do is revitalize rural America, or show how it can be done by stimulating and promoting local production of food and processing of food for the region. And this is an example, instead of, and I don't want to step on any of the industry there in Arizona for your oranges, but instead of drinking orange juice every morning for breakfast, in Montana, there's not an orange tree within 1,000 miles of us. So why don't we support some of our own farmers who are just dying to have something that's viable, and grow apples and sour cherries and drink that. So those are the kind of things we're doing. And I love the apples. Yeah, we're having very good luck with many varieties.
I'm sure you could take one more question. I don't know if there are any other questions at this point, but it's been a great 45 minutes, and we really do appreciate having another Rotarian like you, Bob, come in and educate us a little and talk to us. You've had a chance to share some knowledge with us, and we appreciate that. I'd like to, if you were close by, I would drive up and visit you today, but I don't have the ability to do that right now. But I hope to to at some point in the future.
Well, in the summertime, it's a little nicer to come in the summer anyway, but you're welcome anytime.
Well, on behalf of our club, thank you very much. And we have a banner as well that we will forward to you, and we'll send that out in the US mail. So look for it sometime in the next month or so.
Well,
But we will
fine.
be-
Yeah, you
we'll
got
be
to
sending-
compete with Christmas mail now.
Yes.
Well, great.
We're going to just conclude our meeting. We're going to jump ahead and thank everyone who's here in the meeting, reminding our club that the theme this year is cultivating membership, supporting the community and youth services, having a good time and celebrating our 100-year anniversary. So this has been meeting number 33. We've been having fun getting some things done. Thanks to all that are here. Next week, we're going to have the Rotary Christmas program with the Westwood Honor Choir. Following that, the 2 weeks following that, we will be dark. So we will see you all next week. We've had a great meeting. That's made it a great day. Let's go forward and make it outstanding. Thanks all for attending.